911, what is your emergency? You had to take me on all at once. Well, I'm gonna take you on by myself.
It started just after 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon in the town of Granby.
This is when we first arrived on the scene, and it looked like officers were firing some pretty heavy arms at us.
Hello, my name is Marvin Heemeyer. Enough is enough. I'm not gonna take it anymore.
A quiet town destroyed? When we hear the word bulldozer, what usually comes to mind is a very powerful machine used in construction and demolition of buildings. But in the hands of Marvin Heemeyer, a bulldozer became more than just an ordinary machine. He turned it into a weapon of revenge, an armored vehicle that caused intense fear and massive destruction. But how did it come to this point? A former Air Force veteran? In the middle of the state of Colorado lies the small but beautiful town of Granby. It is known for its peaceful way of life, breathtaking scenery, and a community where almost everyone knows each other. Here, Marvin Heemeyer, a skilled welder and former member of the Air Force, chose to start a new life. In 1992, he bought 2 hectares of land where he built his own muffler shop. Marvin was known as hardworking, skilled in designing and repairing machines, and always ready to help anyone in need. Because of this, many people had great respect for him. But behind his quiet life, a serious conflict was slowly brewing. His next conflict with some powerful personalities in town ultimately pushed him to the brink of desperation. These events marked the beginning of an act of revenge that would shake all of Granby. Who were the people he clashed with? And how did it all lead to one of the most well-known incidents in the town's history? But before we begin, if you're new to our channel, make sure to subscribe so you'll always be updated with videos like this. Marvin's dream of living a quiet life in Granby slowly crumbled when a serious conflict erupted between him and the influential Docheff family. It all started when Marvin managed to acquire a valuable lot that Docheff was planning to buy. This land was right next to his muffler shop. The simple sale of land became the seed for the events that would later lead to the creation of what would be called the Killdozer. The Docheff family planned to use that land to build a concrete batch plant. But for Marvin, this was a big problem because if the project pushed through, his customers would almost lose access to his business. As time went on, the conflict between the two sides only deepened. At first, Marvin agreed to sell his land to Docheff for $200,000 and $250,000. But as the tension grew, he suddenly withdrew from the agreement. He repeatedly raised his asking price until it reached the huge amount of $1 million. At this point, any possibility of a proper discussion between both sides was completely destroyed. In 2001, Marvin's greatest fear came true. The zoning commission and town officials approved the construction of a concrete plant despite his strong opposition. For Marvin, this was a clear betrayal and a great injustice. He didn't give up right away. He spent a lot. He spent around $150,000 on various legal cases to stop the project and overturn the town's decision. But all his appeals failed. In the end, he almost ran out of savings, and his emotions and hope were slowly destroyed. Out of desperation, Marvin asked for support from the residents of Granby. He circulated petitions hoping that there would be allies who would fight with him. But he experienced the opposite. Almost no one responded to his call. The silence of the community only deepened his feelings of loneliness and disappointment. And as if everything he had gone through was not enough, he was also fined by the town of Granby more than $2,500 for various alleged violations, including storing old vehicles on his property. Marvin insisted that these were not junk. Those vehicles were part of his custom muffler business and were used for his work. He even accused the local government of deliberately cutting off his electricity and other utilities to make it easier to build the concrete plant. As each day passed, he felt more and more cornered and had nowhere else to turn. In one of his audio recordings, he poured out all his grievances, saying it was because of your anger, because of your ill intentions, and because of your rage, you don't want to give me a chance to make peace. So now I believe I will leave this world with a huge debt to you, a debt that can never be repaid until the day of final judgment. That is when we will know what the true price of all this will be." Those words clearly reflect the depth of his desperation and seem to serve as a warning about the drastic step he was about to take. As his world slowly crumbled, he completely hid behind silence. There, in his mind, a plan for revenge began to form against those he believed had ruined his life. The skilled welder, Marvin, quietly carried out a plan that would shake the entire town of Granby. While no one noticed, he was gradually modifying his Komatsu bulldozer. In his silence, the once ordinary machine was being turned into a terrifying vehicle that would later be known as Killdozer. But before we find out how this controversial vehicle was created, let's first look back at the life of the man behind it. Before the Killdozer was born, there was Marvin Heemeyer, a man whose life experiences shaped the path he would take. He was born in October 1951 in South Dakota. As he grew up, he honed his skills as an excellent welder and later served in the United States Air Force. His experience in the military taught him discipline, resourcefulness, and the belief that he himself is in control of the direction of his life. Beliefs that would later become a big part of his decisions. In one of his audio recordings, he clearly expressed his belief that I am the second captain of my life. God is the first, I am the second. And as his story went on, his statements became even more intense. According to him, you tried to control my life. You thought you had the right to dictate how I should live. You are not the ones who will decide how much I will earn, what I want, or what is right for me. Only God and I will determine how to live. I'm not a slave to any person. I'm a slave only to God and His will. After he left the Air Force, Marvin discovered his true passion, welding. He didn't know that this skill would be the key to building the machine that would later become the symbol of one of the most famous acts of revenge in history. In 1991, at the age of 38, he took a 6-month vacation in the beautiful place of Grand Lake, Colorado. That temporary vacation turned into a permanent stay because he was immediately captivated by the beautiful scenery and the peaceful community of the place. Because of his deep love for the place, he bought 2 hectares of land near West Motor Road in Granby. In 1992, he dedicated almost all of his savings, approximately $50,000, to buy that land. There, he built his own muffler shop. He left his previous job as a mechanic and bravely started his own business. He devoted all his time, energy, and dedication to it. It didn't take long for Marvin to be known as a hardworking, friendly, and reliable person. He often helped those in need without expecting anything in return. For him, friendship and good relationships were very important. According to those who knew him, he was cheerful, easy to get along with, and naturally talented in engineering. He also loved exploring nature and enjoying outdoor activities. But despite his kind personality, he also had one undeniable trait. He spoke directly and wasn't afraid to argue when he believed he was right. He didn't beat around the bush and never backed down from any challenge. As his conflict with the local officials intensified, this trait became even more apparent. Some people even said that Marvin was someone you shouldn't cross. This warning seemed to foreshadow the tragedy that would happen a few years later. As he isolated himself more and more and his mind was slowly consumed by anger and revenge, he began modifying his Komatsu bulldozer into a machine the world had never seen before. For almost a year and a half, he secretly modified the bulldozer. Its original purpose was just to make a path to his muffler shop, but he turned it into a weapon against the people he believed had ruined his life. Using the skills of a veteran welder and a heart full of anger, Marvin painstakingly built the thick armor of the Killdozer. He used thick steel, in some parts reaching almost a foot in thickness. To make it even stronger, he filled the gaps between the steel plates with concrete, creating armor that was almost impenetrable and extremely difficult to destroy. At that point, the Killdozer was no longer just an ordinary bulldozer. It had become an armored machine built for a single purpose: to carry out Marvin Heemeyer's revenge. While tirelessly working on his secret project, Marvin continued to reinforce the Killdozer, turning it into something like a moving fortress on top of the Caterpillar tracks. He equipped it with 3 firing ports where different types of guns were positioned: a Ruger Mini 14, an FN-FNC, and a Barrett M82. These holes served as protected positions so he could fire while remaining inside the thick armor of the vehicle. The placement of these weapons clearly shows how deep his desperation was and how far he was willing to go to carry out his revenge. While he was building the Killdozer, Marvin also recorded several audio tapes where he poured out his grievances and feelings. In one of the recordings, he said that he hoped someday the people of Granby would understand that the way you treated me for so many years is what pushed me into this situation. You made me a desperate man. And when a person is desperate, he can do things he never thought he would just to get back what he feels was taken from him. Those words were full of resentment and anger and seemed to serve as a warning of the tragedy that was about to happen, to make sure no one would notice what he was doing. Marvin usually only worked in his workshop at night. He even set up a temporary living space inside the building. He slept there during the day, and at night he continued working on the Killdozer. Because of this, his plan remained a secret, and no one suspected that a huge threat was slowly taking shape. As he neared the completion of his project, his belief in having a divine mission grew even stronger. He believed he was an instrument of justice, and that what he was about to do was a way to right the wrongs done to him. In another one of his audio recordings, he said, "I believe what I'm doing is right. If this were wrong, God wouldn't have allowed me to reach this point. He wouldn't give me a successful life if the path I'm taking is wrong. I may not have been rich in money for most of my life, but for who I am and the life I have, I feel like I am a rich person. I thank God for everything He has given me. Yes, I have sacrificed a lot. I don't have a wife and I don't have my own family, but I believe there is a reason why I was created this way, and now I will carry that cross and fulfill the purpose He has set for me." That statement shows how strong his faith and determination are. Feelings that would later become the beginning of the turmoil that would shake all of Granby. The creation of the Killdozer was the most important turning point in his life. The anger and resentment he had been harboring for so long finally turned into a concrete plan for revenge. As he put the final parts on the machine he had created, he knew that the day of his long-awaited confrontation was near. The residents of Granby had no idea that their quiet town was about to witness one of the most unusual rampages in American history. Soon, Marvin would unleash the Killdozer on those he held responsible. Believing they had ruined his life, a day would begin that the entire community would never forget. A day when one man's desperation, intelligence, and intense anger combined, leaving behind a trail of massive destruction and chaos. On the morning of June 4, 2004, the residents of Granby woke up to a scene they never imagined would happen in their quiet town. Behind the wheel of his heavily armored Killdozer, Marvin Heemeyer began his planned act of revenge. The massive machine crashed into the wall of his own muffler shop and finally broke through to get out. That marked the beginning of one of the most controversial events in the history of Granby. As the Killdozer moved through the streets, fear and chaos quickly engulfed the entire community. The first target of Marvin was the concrete plant owned by Docheff, the businessman he had long blamed for the ruin of his life. He drove the massive machine straight at the facility. One by one, the 2 buildings collapsed while Docheff and his employees could do nothing but watch what was happening. In just a few minutes, the Killdozer proved its terrifying power. The once ordinary bulldozer had become an almost unstoppable steel giant, crushing everything that stood in its way. The Killdozer was so heavily armored that repeated gunfire from police using shotguns and M4 rifles had almost no effect on it. Despite all attempts to stop him, Marvin remained undeterred and continued his attack, leaving a trail of destroyed buildings in his wake. One of the first to give way was the front of Mountain Parks Electric, which completely collapsed after being rammed by the massive machine. This was followed by Maple Street Builders, which was almost destroyed as well due to the force of the collision. As his rampage continued, Marvin targeted one by one the buildings and institutions he believed played a big part in what he had gone through. Included in these were Granby Town Hall and the local police station, both of which sustained severe damage. Despite the extent of the destruction, one thing was almost miraculous. No civilians lost their lives during the entire incident. Meanwhile, the armor he had worked on for months proved to be almost impossible to penetrate. In some parts, the steel was more than a foot thick, and between them was thick concrete that served as additional protection. Because of this, the next shots fired by the police and even the SWAT team had almost no effect. The bullets just kept bouncing off the hard body of the Killdozer as they desperately searched for a way to stop it. They also tried to destroy the cameras that Marvin was using to see his surroundings while inside the sealed vehicle. But even these were protected by 3-inch bulletproof plastic, so their plan didn't succeed either. As time passed, the Killdozer continued to demolish other buildings. Among those damaged were Liberty Savings Bank, the office of Sky High News, and even Copycat Graphics, a printing company located along Dirt Road. While all this was happening, Marvin and the authorities were also exchanging gunfire using the weapons installed inside the Killdozer. But again, the police bullets had almost no effect because of the vehicle's thick armor. There was also a moment when an even worse tragedy almost happened when the Killdozer passed near some propane tanks. If those had been hit, it could have caused a massive explosion. But because of the limited firing angle of his weapons, he didn't hit them. So a bigger disaster was avoided. In the end, everything concluded when the Killdozer reached its final target, Gamble's hardware store. As Marvin continued his attack, the engine's cooling system was damaged after the anti-freeze lines were cut. The engine gradually overheated, started to smoke, and eventually lost power. After that, the Killdozer fell into the building's basement. One of its caterpillar tracks was left hanging in the air, causing it to become completely immobile. At that moment, Marvin realized that he had no way to escape or continue with his plan. Instead of surrendering, he chose to end his own life using a weapon. The Killdozer, the machine he himself built, became his final resting place. After that devastating incident, the difficult process of recovery began for the town of Granby. Authorities spent more than 7 hours cutting through the thick steel of the Killdozer before they were finally able to open it. There, they found Marvin Heemeyer lifeless. Along with his body were the weapons he used, a video camera, 3 monitors that served as his eyes while inside the vehicle, an electric fan to keep the inside of the machine cool, and a bottle of sparkling water. Until now, public opinion about him is still divided. Some believe that he was a tragic victim of a system that, in his view, oppressed him. For them, he was a man who was pushed by a series of failures until he completely lost hope. But for others, he was a dangerous vigilante who chose to use violence, and no reason can justify that. Because of what he did, even the Killdozer became the center of intense public interest. Officials were worried that it might become a tourist attraction or a symbol of violence. Because of this, they carefully dismantled the entire machine and scattered its parts in different junkyards so that no one could ever reassemble or display it as a reminder of the incident. Eventually, Marvin's friends scattered his ashes in the mountains of Colorado, the place he loved the most. It was a quiet farewell to a man whose deep desperation led him down a path of no return. In the following years, Granby slowly rebuilt the damaged buildings and tried to heal the wounds left by that incident. The memory of that day may never be completely erased. But the community showed their resilience and ability to rise after such a tremendous ordeal. Now, the question is, does it still remain? In your opinion, is Marvin Heemeyer a villain or just a man pushed to the edge by desperation? Share your opinion in the comments section. And if you want to watch more documentary videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to Noel Polo TV and hit the notification bell so you'll always stay updated on our future uploads.